the marketplace, and they didn't really see black people reading science fiction and fantasy. So I said, well, what I'll do is that I'll start my own company, and I'll publish my own stuff. I didn't mind doing that. I had a business previously, so I knew the ins and outs. I knew what I needed to do. So to me, it wasn't a big leap of faith. Print on demand was getting really big. A lot of things, ebooks. There were a lot of things that were in place that made it a lot less expensive to self-publish and be an independent publisher than it would have been 10, 15, 20 years ago. So I got into it, started publishing my own things, was actually kind of pleasantly surprised the reaction I got to what I was doing. And a lot of it was because I was doing stuff that hadn't been done a lot. There are black science fiction writers out there, but writing in the areas that I was writing in, there wasn't a lot of people doing it. And writers are not marketers. They usually let somebody else do it for them. So with me being out there pushing the work as opposed to sitting there and waiting for somebody else to find me and push it for me, it gave me an advantage as far as getting my work out there. Not too long after I got out there, I started doing anthologies because I started finding out there were other writers who wanted to do the same thing that I was doing, but they didn't have the opportunity to publish. And so I hooked up with a writer named Charles Saunders. If you're familiar with Sword and Sorcery, he created a character called Morrow in the 1970s, and they consider him the Black Conan. He has a cult following in the industry, and we met by chance on the internet. He read one of my manuscripts, and we've been kind of fast friends since then. So we got together and did an anthology called Griots, which is a collection of stories by writers basically writing about black characters in that sword and sorcery type setting and stuff. The anthology did very well, so we did another one called Griots 2, where we focused on African American women characters, because there's not many black men characters, there were no black women characters. So we decided we wanted to do that and give people an opportunity. And we got people that had written stories 20, 30 years ago, great stories, but they didn't get them published because they were writing about black characters. And so that's why the anthologies were so strong, because we got these strong stories that just didn't get the opportunity to get out there. Because editors are people. They publish what they like, and they publish what they think they can sell.
Right.
And whereas since this was my market, I knew I could sell to that market and stuff. So we've been building the business since then. Like a lot of artists, you get the reputation before you make the money. So we're starting to get it. We've gotten a really good reputation in the speculative fiction industry. A matter of fact, somebody just sent me an article that someone did about books that focus on if you're into multicultural fiction, and they featured 2 of our anthologies in this article. So we're starting to get that recognition in there, and I call the company MV Media because I wanted to go beyond publishing. The writing is the foundation because that's what I can do. But that's also going to be the foundation for the animation, for the movies, for anything else that we can build on what we're creating with the writing and stuff like that. And art is a big part of it, because I think also people have to see images. And one of the things I want to do is I wanted black people to see themselves in positive images. And so the art is very important. I work with a lot of artists. And a lot of the artists I work with, it's the first time somebody's ever commissioned them to do that type of artwork. So they're excited about it, So we get some really good artwork. We've built a reputation now for our book covers. People love our covers because we get some great artists, and it seems like they go the extra mile when they're doing this stuff for us, because it's just their first time having an opportunity to do that kind of stuff. So it's working out real well. We're making a name for ourselves. We're getting some reputation. We're getting a reputation out there. It's fun. I enjoy every aspect of it. So that's what we do.
That's why you're not a failed artist, or you wouldn't be where you are.
Right, you're not a failed artist.
That's right.
You're making it work. That's right.
Well, I can draw a hell of a stick, man. I tell you.
All right. So my first question is to define the word "good" when it's related to art. So, is there such a thing as good art, bad art, and how do you define it? So let's start from that side and work our way this way.
I think when it comes to art, it's a subjective thing.
And you can say writing also, you can bring it into it all together.
Yeah, you see that in writing. I mean, you see it in any type of artwork. It's subjective. It's about, I think everybody brings their own experiences, their own culture, their own likes and dislikes to an artwork. And the best way, to me, the best example of it as a writer is when I see reviews on my books.
Right.
Because I'll have one person saying, "Oh, this is the best book I ever read in my life." Where's this guy been? And then I have somebody else say, "This is crap."
Right.
So it's a subjective thing. So to say that something, and I always caution people when they say something is good or bad, because to me it's all about where you're coming from.
That's right.
I may look at a piece of artwork and it'll relate to me in a certain way because of my experiences, and I can connect with it. Whereas somebody else may see that same piece of artwork and they may not have any kind of connection to it.
That's right.
And they'll just look at it and say, "Well, I don't understand this." And sometimes my opinion of art has changed because I may be educated on the artist and what the artist was trying to achieve. That's why I like to go to the High Museum sometimes, because I wasn't a really big fan of abstract art. But I was going through the museum and they were reading, and I was reading about the artist and about what he was trying to accomplish. And as I read that and I saw the artwork, I could relate what the artist was doing to his story.
That's it.
And then that made me appreciate the art more. I could actually even see the transitions, how the artist was growing and trying different things like that. So to me, it's not. There's being good technically, which means that you show that you've mastered the basics. It's like with a writer, you know how to tell a story, you know how to put a story together, and you can look at that and you can judge that. You can tell if somebody's doing writing from a good job technically. But whether or not the overall story is good or bad, that's up to the reader, and that's up to their interpretation. So that's the way I look at it.
All right.
There's nothing else to say. No, really, I love what he said, though, exactly, because basically art is your own self-expression. That's all art is, okay? So there should be no, you're better, you're worse, you're not good enough, all the limits we put on art to me. But technically, like you said, if you're an artist in whatever art form you are, you try to be the best you can. You only know where you've got to a place where you know that you're doing good at what you're doing. You've put the time in, and the work is good. Then after that comes the next part of your audience. The basic bottom line is not like you don't want everybody to like your work. I mean, that'd be wonderful in a perfect world, but it's not going to happen like that way. So once again, you're after your audience, and that's what we're all out here to do, to draw in your audience. And once you do that, that's when you start to figure out where to now go with your work now. Is your work now going to be more meaningful if we go over here and attach it to this organization or that organization or maybe some other product you're going to put it into? Then it starts to make sense as a business. Once again, that's where a lot of artists fall short. They don't look at art as a business. Okay, do you want to do it as fun or do you want to do it as a business? So basically, as business, you want to do your demographics just like a business would do. If you set up a McDonald's, you want to know what's around you. You do art, you want to know what's around you. Can it sell? Will it go where it needs to go? So it's basically real common sense in what you do with your art. And not listen to the critics. That has nothing to do with anything. Even what Andy Warhol said, don't worry about what they say about you, just keep painting. It's that simple. All right, Floyd.
So as to not be redundant, all of these great ideas, I think, and what I've learned and what I've observed about artists, especially the ones that I've gotten a chance to know better or just see more of their work, I think good art, quote unquote good art, I think is when you're able to execute the idea.
That's right.
So if you're an artist and you have an idea, how well you were able to execute the idea, to me, that's where I would say that's good art or maybe not good art. Because the idea, I don't have to agree with the idea, but I think I can understand what you were trying to do and see if you executed the idea. And maybe wherever that took us along that path, everyone is going to interpret that differently. But I think that being able to say, this is an idea that I have, and being able to execute that competently, I think is good art. And I think that there's also a component of good art that is compelling. Like the art makes you feel something, or makes you think, or makes you question something. Ask a question. Like, I think good art makes you ask a question. And engages with the public in some sort of way that is compelling in that particular.
All right. So I should have got a critic to sit in this panel and say there is ugly art out there.
But you know what, Daniel? But that doesn't even matter. You might have the best executed piece in the room, somebody will walk in the room and it will really be a piece of horrible art and they'll say, okay, $1 million, and they'll write the check for it.
Yep.
So it's really about what the person sees and feels out of it. So it
That's
doesn't
exactly
really matter. It really doesn't
Because I
matter.
see a lot of ugly and bad art out there.
But
And
who
a
are
lot
we
of
to
it goes
judge?
for a lot of money, and a lot of it is bought by the city of Atlanta.
No, City of Cleveland.
It's Cleveland.
Yeah.
And it's put into parks,
Yeah.
into the corners,
Yes.
and it's like,
Yes.
what is this? It's a pile of something.
Yes.
And somehow it's art, and I'm sure there's a story, and I'm sure if the artist was there, he could explain it. I've been at the High Museum. And I've seen these big installations, and it's like it looks like somebody just grabbed a bunch of cans and threw them up.
That is
I
true.
can do that.
That is true.
Fire on the wall.
And then,
Yeah.
and then you're sitting there looking at it like, well, okay, if a person says this is art, then that be art. Sure, I'm okay with that. But there's got to be some kind of qualifications for this to be here, because anyone can do this. We have 5-year-olds in kindergarten all over this country doing that exact thing. So why is that more valuable or more so-called good or
You know what I figured out?
worthy to sit in here?
You know what I figured out? This might be a joke, but I think it's real. They were able to come up with that colorful metaphor. When you read the description under that art you saw bad, it is so well written.
Yep.
It makes you feel like, wow.
Yep. My
Well,
cousin.
Well, let me push back just a tad bit on that, because I'm going to paint with a broad brush here, but I feel like when people see art, and maybe they feel the way that you do, Daniel, about, anyone could do that. Anyone can do that.
That's right.
Like, I think that there's this misconception at times that when there's something that perhaps doesn't aesthetically move you, that you reduce it. You
Right.
reduce the process
Exactly.
down to something that
Exactly.
is more basic than what it actually took to create that. Especially if there's scale involved, especially if there are material considerations involved, especially if it's outside. Like, there are things that artists do to create their work that not everyone can do. And I think that a lot of times the public in general, not pointing fingers at anyone, I think lots of times people will say that anyone can do something, and that's not the case.
No, never
and so
the case.
I think that it's going back maybe to some technical components of it that make it sophisticated, or maybe going back to some of the actual themes involved. If you see a description that makes you perceive it in a different way, I feel like sometimes perhaps when art is put in the public sphere, there isn't enough context for the viewer to then interpret that art. Because as someone who talks to a lot of artists, I can honestly say that after I've had a 30-minute conversation with you about your work, I see your work completely different from that point on.
Absolutely.
Because I know you,
That's
I know
right.
your story,
That's right.
I know what you're trying to accomplish. So it's less paint on canvas at that point, because I know what you're trying to accomplish. So I think that perhaps whoever is in charge of erecting more art in the public space should maybe add more context to the work, so that as people interact with it, it's not so much about, I don't like this, I like this is good, this is bad. Maybe the context helps to inform how you engage with it, and then it may reorient how you,
Okay.
you know.
Well, it's a subjective thing. It's kind of like when you look at music. You know, you got serious music and you got pop music. You know, and sometimes the serious music, what I call the serious music, is the music that you have to understand the music. You have to understand the artist to get into it. It's like some jazz.
Right.
You know, I was not a big fan of what is it? Thelonious Monk. I had a friend of mine who was crazy about his stuff, and I did not like his stuff. But when I saw this, what was that? The Ken, that was that guy Ken Ford does all the documentaries and stuff.
Burns.
Ben Burns. He did the jazz thing, and he talked about Thelonious Monk and talked about his style and talked about everything. And after I learned, like you said, after I learned about him, then it was like, okay, now I can appreciate his music because I know what he was trying to do. But I think if you're making art for the public viewing, the average person doesn't have the time to learn that.
No, they don't.
You know, so if you're going to pick art for a public consumption, you've got to try to find, just like pop music, you probably have to find something that will resonate with the majority of the people that's going through there for them to appreciate it. Because the people who are really serious about it, you know, that's, if you're trying to please the public, in other words, that's probably not the venue to serious artwork. Because when I walk through the airport and they've got art up, I don't have time to get into the context of the art. I'm just seeing it right